I was an extra in a movie, and the lead actress slapped me on every take because I was too good. So I gave her a reality check she's still recovering from. I got the gig through a casting call for background actors. Low-budget independent film shooting in a warehouse district outside the city. It paid $200 for a full day, and I needed the money. I wasn't trying to launch a career. I work at a print shop. I've done community theater since high school, but that's it. I was told I'd be in the background of a bar scene. No lines, no close-ups, just a body filling a room. I showed up at 6 in the morning on a Saturday with about 40 other extras. Wardrobe, hair, makeup, holding area. The lead actress was a woman named Pilar. Nobody around me knew who she was. One of the other extras looked her up and said she'd been in 2 straight-to-streaming movies and a web series canceled after 4 episodes. 9,000 followers and a bio that said award-winning actress, even though the only award was from a festival nobody had heard of. The scene we were shooting was set in a bar. Pilar's character was supposed to confront another woman and slap her across the face. They pulled me from the background pool to play the woman who gets slapped because the original actress had a scheduling conflict. 1 line and 1 slap. The slap would be staged. Pilar was supposed to swing wide and I was supposed to turn my head so it looked real but didn't connect. We rehearsed it once. It went fine. Then we shot it. First take. Pilar delivered her line and swung. She didn't swing wide. She hit me. Open palm, full contact, right across my left cheek. My head snapped sideways. The director yelled cut and asked if I was okay. I said yes because I was in shock. Pilar said sorry, I got caught up in the moment. The director said, let's go again. Second take. She hit me again. Same side, harder. I stepped back and held my face. The director looked at Pilar. She said the angle wasn't right and asked to go again. He said okay. Nobody asked me if I wanted to go again. Third take. She hit me again. This time I saw it coming and tried to turn early, but she adjusted and caught my jaw. My eyes watered. The director told Pilar the first take was fine and they could use it. Pilar said she didn't like how it looked. She said my reaction wasn't believable enough. My reaction wasn't believable enough. She was hitting me for real, and my real reaction to being actually hit for real wasn't believable enough for her. Fourth take. I delivered my line better this time because I was angry, and the anger worked for the scene. The director said that was great, really great. One of the producers standing off to the side nodded. Pilar's face changed. She didn't like that someone noticed me. She asked to go again. She said my line reading was off. The director looked confused because he had just said it was great, but he said fine, 1 more. Fifth take. She hit me so hard I tasted metal. My lip was swelling. Between takes, Pilar walked to her chair and someone brought her water and a towel. I stood on my mark and nobody brought me anything. The makeup artist pressed powder over the red mark on my cheek without saying a word. The director called action. Pilar delivered her line. I delivered mine. She raised her hand. I caught it. I caught her wrist in the air before it reached my face. I held it there. She tried to pull away and I didn't let go. The director didn't say cut. Nobody moved. I looked at Pilar and said, this is take 6. You've hit me 5 times. The first one was enough. You're not slapping me because the scene needs it. You're slapping me because you heard the director say my line was great and it scared you. I'm an extra. I have 1 line. And the fact that 1 line from a background actor is enough to make you lose control tells everyone on this set exactly why you're still doing movies that go straight to streaming. I let go of her wrist. She looked at the director. She looked at the crew. She looked at the producer who had nodded. Nobody spoke. Pilar walked off set and didn't come out of her trailer for 40 minutes. During the break, the assistant director told me they were going to use the 4th take and that I could go home for the day with full pay. I said I'd stay. When the shoot wrapped that evening, the producer walked over and handed me a business card. His name was Yuto. I didn't call the number that night. I sat with it. Monday morning at the print shop, I looked at that card again and made the call. Yuto picked up on the 2nd ring. Before I could get through my introduction, he cut me off. I know who you are, he said. I've been hoping you'd call. He said that 4th take was the best moment in the entire shoot. He'd been doing this 11 years and he knew when someone had it. Then he asked if I'd ever thought about acting professionally. I told him about community theater, about the print shop, about having no agent or reel or connections. Yuto said he was producing a short film, that there was a supporting role with real dialogue and real scenes, and that he wanted me to come in and audition. Auditions are next week, he said. Don't think too long. That night I called Cecilia, my closest friend from years of community theater, the kind of person who will tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it. I told her about Yuto, the short film, the audition. I told her I was scared. Cecilia didn't pause. She said, you caught a woman's hand mid-swing on a movie set and told her exactly who she was. If that's not an audition, I don't know what is. I spent every night that week running lines after my shifts. By the time I walked into the audition, the words didn't feel like words anymore. They felt like breathing. There were 6 other women in the waiting area. Better clothes, better hair, folders with headshots and resumes. I had a printed copy of the sides and a water bottle. Yuto was on one side of the audition table. Alberto was on the other. The same Alberto who directed the first film and let Pilar hit me 5 times. He was directing this short too. I pushed that down and focused. I stood on the mark and said the words the way they felt true to me. Somewhere in the middle of the read, I forgot where I was and just lived in the scene. When I finished, I looked up. Alberto was leaning forward with his hands flat on the table. He turned to Yuto and said, that's the one. They called me that evening to say I had the part. I stood at the dining table with my phone pressed against my ear and felt something crack open in my chest I'd been keeping sealed for a long time. For 2 days, I was just happy. Then the stakes went up. At our first production meeting, Alberto mentioned casually that Pilar had called him twice asking about the project. She'd heard Yuto was involved and wanted in. He'd told her they were going a different direction. My stomach tightened. 2 days later, a message request appeared on social media from Pilar. Friendly, almost sweet. She said she hoped there were no hard feelings about the set stuff and that we should grab coffee sometime. No hard feelings about the set stuff. Like being hit 5 times was just set stuff. I sent a screenshot to Cecilia, who replied in under a minute. She said, she's not being nice. She's keeping you close so she can figure out how to pull you down. I didn't respond to Pilar, but I knew ignoring her wouldn't make her disappear. People like Pilar don't just move on. They reposition. They wait. Then they come at you from a different angle. She showed up at the print shop on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the back when the clerk called my name. I walked to the front and there she was, smiling at the clerk like they were old friends. She said she wanted to clear the air. She said she'd hate for what happened on set to follow either of us around. Then she mentioned that she she and Alberto went way back and had talked about doing another project together. She was lying. She was trying to sound important, like she had power, like I should be careful because she knew people and I didn't. I didn't say anything. I just stood there and let her talk until she left. I called Yuto as soon as my shift ended and told him what had happened. He said she'd called him too. And then he told me she'd said I was difficult on set and that he should be careful. He said he didn't believe her. I was standing 10 feet away when it happened, he said. She hit you repeatedly, and you still gave the best take of the day. Then he warned me that Pilar had more connections than I thought, and that she knew how to whisper in the right ears and make people doubt you before they even met you. I drove to rehearsal that evening with my hands tight on the steering wheel. Alberto noticed the second I walked in and pulled me aside. Whatever's in your head, leave it at the door, he said. You earned this part. Nobody gave it to you. I took a breath and did the scene, and it was the best I'd ever done it. After rehearsal, I pulled Alberto aside and told him everything. Every slap, every take. Pilar showing up at the print shop, the calls she was making. Alberto listened without interrupting. When I was done, he said, I let that happen on my set. I saw what she was doing, and I let it keep going because I didn't want to deal with the fallout. I didn't protect a member of my cast. That's on me. Then he looked at me and said, that won't happen again. Not on any set I run. Rehearsals went well for the next week. Something was different in the room. Alberto was directing me with more focus, more patience, like he was trying to make up for what happened on the first set without saying it out loud. After one session where we ran through the hardest scene in the script 3 times, he sat back in his chair and looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, you remind me why I started making films. You don't perform. You live in it. I didn't know what to say to that. I just stood there on my mark in that small rehearsal space with the bad lighting and the folding chairs and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like maybe I'd been in the wrong room my whole life and I just found the right one. Cecilia took me out to dinner after a particularly strong rehearsal. We went to a place near her apartment we'd been going to for years and sat there, and I told her how good things were going. Cecilia listened, and then she looked at me over her glass and said, you seem happy. I said, I am. Then I got quiet because something had been sitting in the back of my head for weeks, and I'd never said it out loud. I said, I think I've been afraid of wanting this. Like if I actually try and fail, it'll be worse than never trying. At least at the print shop I know what I'm getting. It's safe. It's boring, but it's safe. Cecilia put her glass down and said, you already tried. You caught her hand. Everything since then has been you choosing not to go back to hiding. That feeling lasted about 12 hours. Then one morning Hunter called, the assistant director from the first film who was also working with Alberto. His voice was flat. No. He said Alberto had gotten a call from one of the investors. Someone had told her the production was chaotic, that there were personnel issues with a cast member who had been combative on a previous set. The words Pilar had used were almost identical to what she'd said directly to Alberto 3 days earlier. Combative, liability, personnel issues. I drove straight to the rehearsal space. Alberto and Yuto were already there. Yuto said Pilar had reached out to at least 2 people connected to the funding and framed it like she was doing them a favor. She wasn't just trying to take my role. She was willing to blow up the funding for an entire film, a film that other people had worked on for months, just to make sure I didn't get to be in it. She would rather burn the house down than watch someone else live in it. Alberto told me he wasn't replacing me and wanted me to hear that clearly. But if the investor pulled out, they'd lose 1/3 of the budget and it would change everything. I took a breath and said, I know exactly what Pilar is doing. She couldn't outperform me, so she's trying to erase me instead. Let me handle this. I just need one thing. The call sheet from the first shoot and the names of every crew member who watched her hit me 5 times. Alberto reached for his bag. I'll have it to you tonight. That was the moment I stopped being the person things happened to. Alberto gave me the call sheet and the crew contacts. I spent 2 evenings at the dining table making phone calls, asking one question over and over. Would you be willing to tell the truth about what happened on that set? The makeup artist who had pressed powder over my swelling cheek said yes. The sound operator who had the audio files said yes. 2 other crew members said yes. I asked each person to put what they saw in writing in their own words. The makeup artist described reapplying powder between every take because the redness kept showing through, and noted that my cheek was visibly swollen by take 3. The sound operator was the most detailed. He wrote that the audio from takes 1 through 5 clearly captured the sound of full contact, skin on skin, nothing like what a stage slap sounds like, and that the audio from take 6 had no impact sound at all because I stopped it. I put everything into a plain folder, printed copies of each statement, the call sheet showing 6 takes for a scene scheduled for 1, notes from the production log. I didn't add commentary. I just organized the facts and let them sit there on paper, clean and clear and impossible to argue with. 2 days before the investor meeting, Pilar called the print shop. Her voice was different this time, no sweetness. She said she was giving me a chance to walk away with my dignity, drop out of Alberto's project, and she'd stop making calls. You're an extra, she said. Stay in the background where you belong. I said, is that a threat, Pilar? She made a short, sharp sound like she wanted me to know she thought I was a joke. She said, it's advice. Take it. I hung up and called Lawson, a friend from community theater who works in event production now and stays calm when everything is falling apart. I told him everything. When I finished, he said, she's panicking. People who are winning don't call to threaten you. He asked when the investor meeting was and said he was coming with me. That night, one of the crew members who had agreed to give a statement texted to say he'd changed his mind. Pilar had contacted him and threatened to make sure he never worked on one of her sets again if he backed my version. He said he was sorry, and he believed me but couldn't risk it. I sat at the dining table and stared at the folder, down 1 statement, but I still had 4 others. I still had the call sheet. I still had the audio logs Yuto had pulled from the production files. Pilar could scare one person into silence, but she couldn't change the sound of her own hand hitting my face 5 times. The night before the meeting, Cecilia came over and sat at the dining table and read every statement, every page of the call sheet, every note. When she finally looked up, she said, this isn't just about the short film anymore, is it? I said no. It's about making sure she can't do this to the next person. She hit me 5 times and nobody stopped her. Then she tried to erase me for being good enough to notice. I'm not letting that stand. Cecilia slid the folder back to me and said, then don't. Lawson picked me up at 8. We didn't talk much on the drive over. The folder was on my lap. When we arrived, he turned to me and said, how are you feeling? I said, scared, but not of her. I'm scared that even with all of this, someone's still going to look at me and see an extra. Someone who doesn't belong in the room. He nodded slowly. Then he said, I see see someone who got hit 5 times and didn't quit, who got threatened at her own job and didn't quit, who got told to stay in the background and decided to walk right to the front. That's not an extra, that's the lead. I just nodded and opened the car door. The building was a 3-story brick place on the edge of the production district with a coffee shop on the ground floor. We climbed a narrow staircase to the second floor. I reached for the handle at the end of the hallway and went in. The conference room was small, a table, 6 chairs, a window looking out over the street. Alberto and Yuto were seated. Hunter was standing near the window. At the head of the table was a woman I didn't recognize. 50s, glasses, holding a tablet in front of her like it was a shield. The investor. Her eyes went straight to the folder when I walked in. Lawson sat quietly against the back wall. The investor set her tablet down and folded her hands on the table. She said she'd heard concerns about the production and wanted to understand the situation before she committed the remaining funds. Alberto said the production was on schedule and on budget, and that the only disruption had come from outside, from someone who wasn't part of this film. Yuto took over. He said there was an actress named Pilar who had been the lead on the previous film he produced, and that since that shoot wrapped, she had been contacting people connected to this project and spreading false claims about one of the cast members. He paused. The cast member she's targeting is the same person she physically struck multiple times during filming. Not staged contact. Real hits. On camera. The investor's face changed. A tightening around the mouth and a shift in her posture. She said, "I'm going to need specifics." Then she looked at me. I opened the folder. I pulled out the first document and placed it in front of her. The call sheet from the original shoot. I pointed to the scene number and said, "This scene was scheduled for 1 take. A simple slap. Choreographed. Staged contact with no real impact." Then I said, "They did 6 takes." She looked down at the call sheet and I could see her eyes tracking across the timestamps. The scene number repeated 6 times. I gave her a moment. Then I placed the next document down. The makeup artist's handwritten statement. I said, "This is from the makeup artist on set. She describes reapplying powder to my face between takes because the redness from real contact kept showing through, and notes that by the 3rd take, my cheek was visibly swollen." I placed the next one down. The sound operator's statement. I said, "This is from the sound operator. He reviewed the audio files and confirmed that takes 1 through 5 all contain the sound of full contact impact, skin on skin. He also confirmed that take 6 has no impact sound at all, because on that take, I caught her hand before it reached my face." I laid down the remaining statements one by one. I didn't tell the investor how to feel or what to think. I just let each piece of paper land on that table like a fact, because that's what they were. The room was silent. The only sound was pages turning. After a long time, the investor set the last page down and looked up. She said, "Why wasn't this reported?" Alberto didn't flinch. He said, "Because on a low-budget set, people are afraid to speak up. The crew is working for almost nothing. Nobody wants to be the person who causes a problem. And I should have stopped it after the 2nd take. I saw what was happening and I let it keep going because I didn't want to deal with the fallout." He took a breath. "I didn't protect a member of my cast. That's on me." Hunter stepped forward from the window and said, "I told Pilar after the 4th take that we had what we needed. The scene was done, but she pushed for more. She said the line reading was off even though Alberto had just called it one of the best moments in the shoot." His voice got harder. "She wasn't looking for a better performance. She was punishing someone for being good." The investor said, "And this Pilar has been calling my colleagues telling them your cast member is the problem?" Yuto nodded. "She contacted at least 2 people connected to our funding over the past week. She used words like combative and liability and made it sound like friendly professional advice. Every claim she made is directly contradicted by what you just read." The investor reached for her phone, scrolled for a moment, and placed it in the center of the table. A voicemail played on speaker. The voice was smooth, warm, concerned sounding. It was Pilar. She said she just wanted to give a heads up about someone on Alberto's new project, that she had been really combative on their last set, that she was worried about the production environment, that she'd hate to see good money go towards something that could blow up. The message ended. The investor said, "That message is from 4 days ago." Nobody said anything. The investor's eyes moved from the phone to the folder spread across the table and I could see her putting it together. She looked directly at me for the first time, really looked at me. She said, "What do you want out of this?" I let the question sit for a second. Then I said, "I want to do my job. I want to show up, do the work, and not have someone try to destroy my reputation because I was better than she expected me to be. I didn't ask for any of this. I was an extra who got 1 line. She hit me 5 times because that 1 line scared her. And when that wasn't enough, she tried to make sure I'd never get another one." My voice didn't shake. I didn't cry. I didn't get loud. I just said it the same way I'd laid those documents on the table. Calm, clear, true. The investor looked at Yuto and said, "You have my full investment." Then she said she'd like a copy of those statements. All of them. She said she funded 3 other projects this year, and Pilar's name had come up for 2 of them. She paused. "It won't anymore." Alberto put his hand flat on the table and nodded at me. Slow. The kind that means more than words. Hunter gave a small, quiet thumbs up from near the window. Yuto leaned back and said, "We shoot in 10 days. From the back of the room, Lawson caught my eye and smiled. A real, full, warm smile from someone who had driven me here at 8 in the morning and sat against the back wall for the last half hour without saying a single word, just so I wouldn't